Okay. No, we're live. We're live.
Okay, good. I just got this text just now, just like this second. Sorry. Good friend just had a baby. Anyway, all right.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 5 weeks early, but hopefully.
And I'm the one who says Mazel tov on this show.
You beat us to it, Mike. Good for
I'm
you.
the only non-Jew. Ex-Jew by marriage, and Russ and JNR. So there you go.
Not a Jew by marriage. I married a Jewish woman.
Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah,
which is fantastic. I've got lovely Jewish children, who are awesome.
Okay,
good to know.
and now
Transformative property doesn't work here, Mike.
Yeah.
And now we begin the show with Russ, who has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ. Sorry for something to say.
Pre-show.
Quickly extricate myself.
I was gonna get a toothpick and put it in my mouth and say, "Hey, rest in peace, Razor Ramon, Scott Hall." He was a really good wrestler. He had to get taken off of life support yesterday, and he's had a rough go. I mean, he's had health problems over the years, but he made his mark in wrestling. We all liked him because he was a bad guy that was likable. Like, he was the likable heel, and so everybody, him, Kevin Nash. That's how you really remember him, and he was a guy that did a lot in the ring, and he probably paid the price medically. I think he was getting a hip surgery this go around, and it's one of those things where you look at these guys, and as you get older, you're like, damn, this guy was just too young, and it's just you feel that way. You feel for his family, happy about the way he entertained us all. At least I was entertained by the guy, and so just wanted to mention that. That's all.
Awesome. Give me 1 sec, guys. Let's continue. I'm sorry. I have somebody at the door. 1 second. Sorry. I got to take this real quick.
Okay. Well, I have to save my thing until Eck is on the show, because the whole point of it. Can we just talk about baseball right now? Because it's hilarious. The Freddie Freeman thing that's going on right now. All of a sudden, the Red Sox have joined. Okay. Can you say, we want to raise the price tag on, because supposedly the Blue Jays are in on it. We want to raise the price tag on the Yankees, who I don't think really are interested, and the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. So the Red Sox
and the Rays.
And the Rays.
The Rays are not getting
come on, be serious.
Get the hell out of here, Jan.
Look, I mean,
No.
Look, put it this way, I'm not saying it's realistic. I'm saying they have been rumored to have interest.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they're going to pay him. And look,
who's the highest paid player on the Rays?
Look, I still think he should have gone back to the Braves. I mean, I think in terms of from a leadership perspective, from what they gave up there. Look, I love Olsen, great player, 5 years younger, even better defensively, probably in my opinion than Freeman. But you take a look at what the culture impact associated with losing him, and granted, that could be overrated to a certain extent. But you've also
given up. I don't think it's overrated for him to the Braves, though. I don't.
And you've given up your second, your third, your ninth, and your 14th, and whether or not you believe Christian Pache is really going to pan out, or he's just going to be Jackie Bradley Jr. somewhere else because he can't hit, and your view of Shea Langoliers, and also, I mean, Ryan Cusick, I think, has a lot of upside, but they gave up 4 assets to get Olsen when they had the guy who they could have kept for probably an additional year there, who was a notorious leader in that clubhouse and on the field.
I think it was just desperation at that point when they knew they couldn't sign Freeman. They went and did that, But, Freeman, look, as a Met fan, I'm happy Freeman is out of Atlanta, because Freeman was the major clutch hitter, and he killed a lot of teams. And this guy, you feared pitching to him late in innings with guys on base. Nobody's going to fear Olsen like that. He's going to have to earn it. And I don't think he's the hitter that Freeman was, clutch hitter.
He's a damn good hitter also.
He's not a clutch hitter like Freeman.
But I agree with you on Freeman. Look, it's gone from Chipper Jones to Freeman with the Mets, right? Because both guys are notorious killers. And Freeman, just what he brought on the field. And look, unless something untoward or radical happens, he is on trajectory to be a Hall of Famer down the road. He's not there yet, but clearly on pace to become one. And Mike, in your point on the Yankees, I don't know what direction in which they're going in. I don't know where they're going. I personally think they're going to pivot back to Rizzo and get Anthony Rizzo, because I don't think they're going to want to pay Freeman what he's going to want. And I think Freeman's going to end up possibly on the left coast, which is where everybody thinks he's going to land up.
He's from California, and I think basically they want. Yeah, there you go. I think they.
I'm always right.
Yeah, thanks, Flamester.
But again, one more thing, Mike. There's one rumor though, as you guys saw yesterday. I think it was Bayergo who tweeted Freeman going north to the Blue Jays. Now, whether or not you believe it or not,
I don't believe it. No.
I don't believe it.
Look, you put him on that team, and that team becomes just ridiculously dangerous, because you can alternate him and Guerrero between first base and DH.
Now, okay, this is it was an interesting day in Hamilton on Sunday. You know, the game. It didn't go the way most of the 26,000 fans at Tim Hortons Stadium wanted it to go. Matthews gets suspended for a couple games, but as normally is the case, wherever I'm going, I try to get there early, get sort of settled in. And the NHL actually did a really great job in terms of setting up a shuttle going from the league hotel to the stadium, which allowed me to park away from the hordes and to take the shuttle in and back, which was great. So I got there early, and I'm sitting in the lobby of the Sheraton at a Starbucks drinking a coffee, and I'm talking to Russ on the phone. And some guy walks by, and I'm wearing a mask. As
you always do, because you are a superhero.
Yes, that's because I'm super cool. But no,
it's a big M on the chest that gave him away.
Exactly.
In Canada, I get the S. In Canada, you still have to wear a mask unless you're drinking, so it may have been on, it may have not been on. I think it was probably not on because I was drinking and talking to Russ at the same time, and somebody walks by and turns and slowly looks back and says, "Excuse me, are you Eklund?"
You should have said yes, Mike.
And I said, "No, I'm not that handsome."
I give anybody right from this point forward, though, anybody, listener, anyone out there, the permission to say yes was asked that question.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I said, "But no, I work for him." He says, "Aren't you that Mike Agello guy?"
There you go.
And that's the thing. It's like, okay, the only way he recognizes me, and I'm not making fun of him, but the only way this guy recognizes me is from this show.
That's right.
And at the beginning of the show, I say my name, Agello, not Agello.
I know, but Siri, but I told you, Mike, when I ask Siri to call you, Siri always says Agello.
Yeah, it does.
And so that's where that came from. It's Siri's fault.
It is Siri's fault.
Yes.
Everything's Siri's fault.
Hey, look at Russ's name that showed up on Sirius XM, so you never know.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday, 12:15.
We're reviewing Love is Blind or whatever you're reviewing. The next thing you're reviewing wrestling, the next crazy reality show you're reviewing.
So only in Hamilton do I get mistaken for
That's awesome.
That's true. Mike and I don't look a lot alike.
Oh yeah. Jeez.
No. All right.
Brothers.
If you're carrying around like a 64-ounce iced tea, I could see.
Yeah, right. Unless I'm carrying an iced tea, no one recognizes me. Oh, and that's a funny story about that too. So, shoot, just real quick, we'll get out of here. Sorry, guys, apologize for the stories. But okay, so my son needed a procedure in Florida, so I flew down to Florida. It was in Sarasota, which my in-laws live in Longboat Key, all good. So I stay with the in-laws, and they always get us stuff. They get us food ahead of time and all that stuff. And my mother-in-law says to me, "Hey, I wanted to get you something to drink, but I've never figured out. You always seem to be drinking different things. I never know what it is you drink exactly." To which I said, I can be accused of a lot of things, but I can't be accused of not knowing what it is that I drink. I am like everybody out there knows.
Take a boost.
Everybody in this chat, it's like I am drinking it all the time. Although today I'm drinking Chick-fil-A, but that's normal. That's not my normal thing. But there you have it. All right, let's move on. Here we go. We got lots to talk about. People in the chat room are already saying things I don't agree with. All right. All right, here we go. I can't even tell you what text I'm getting. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, March 15th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm drinking a chai latte right now.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and even the Jets can annoy me in March.
I'm Jan Levine, and Russ Cohen is always annoyed by the Jets.
Once a Jet, always a Jet. Jets.
Better than a shark.
That's right.
Yeah, I would rather be a Jet than a shark.
I've done jazz hands for a while. Okay, so here we go. And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to everybody through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And right now, this time of year, we are doing our best to stay awake because my flight came in at 4 a.m. And I'm tired, but I'm working on it. I've been up talking since 10 a.m. That's late for me to sleep in, but I was up at 10 and been talking to people, and we got a lot to talk about rumor-wise. And a lot of different things.
Why don't we start with this, because we can extrapolate off of that into the rumors, because I would say the Toffoli deal was the first domino, but that was a while back, and that was a guy with term. The first rental domino went last night, and that was Josh Manson going to the Colorado Avalanche for a second-round pick and college prospect Drew Hellison. Now, Russ, we've talked about Hellison, and Elliot Friedman mentioned Hellison about a month ago in connection to the Flyers, that they were interested in him as part of a Giroux deal. He's 22, I believe, 6'2", 195 pounds. He has 25 points with Boston College right now. He's a good prospect. The question is whether Colorado, and this is what I was looking at this deal, is like, does Colorado think that they could have gotten him signed with all the youth that they have on their blue line? And maybe that was part of the reason why they were willing to move him as part of this deal. And Anaheim has vacancies on the blue line. They'll probably have a couple with the likely departure of, now Manson and now the possibility of Hampus Lindholm. But what did you think of this deal?
I mean, it was a great deal. The value was tremendous. I think they probably spoke to Hellison's person, and that person probably said, you guys are loaded with defensemen, and we're not sure what Drew's going to do, because he can go back to school for a year if he really wants to. But I imagine that his advisor probably said something about Anaheim, or at least something about the structure there, and that's probably why he was included in that trade. So, again, because these college free agents have a lot of power. They can really decide where they want to go. They just have to stay in that extra year in school. But he's ready to come out. I mean, he actually looked pretty good in the Olympics, although I felt they underused him. He's a really good skater. He's got a high hockey IQ. He can lay the big hit, but he's not going to be like an overly physical guy. And he can score some points, but he's not like your top offensive defenseman or anything like that. He's a second pairing guy, super reliable, doesn't make mistakes, plays it right. And that is a big pickup for Anaheim, because he is a great complement to a terrific offensive defenseman, whether it would be Drysdale or somebody else. And so that, and this 2023 second, fine, that's really good. I mean, that's maximizing your value. Now, do I feel that maybe hurt Philly? Yeah, because I like Hellison better than I like Justin Barron. So I think that, that takes him out of it. And now that changes things, or maybe the Flyers have to take Barron, who's fine, but we'll talk about that in a bit.
Now the interesting thing, and I'm going to ask Jan about this, because the Rangers are, it's noted that they're in on the D market, and now you've had, I think, 3 guys who you thought that would be on this market off the market. Now you have Klingberg likely staying in Dallas because of the Heiskanen having mono. You have Ristolainen re-signing with the Flyers, and now you have Manson dealt. So that is 3. Those are 3 right-handed options. Ben Sherratt. Now the thing is, I think that this sets the market, or at least helps set the market in terms of a price for a defenseman. If you're only giving up a second-round pick and Hellison, and they're retaining 50% for Manson, I think Montreal asking for a first-round pick is like, you're high. It's not.
Right. Here's the thing. So first of all, in the chat room, I am not the one. Mike is saying that. That Mike, you think that he's offensive only, right? You think he's offensive defenseman only, Sherratt?
Who? Sherratt's not an offensive. He scored a lot of goals this year, but he's not an offensive defenseman.
Okay, so we're in agreement. I don't know. They were responding to something in the chat room.
And what somebody FA was saying, well, Sherratt's got more goals than any Leaf defenseman. Says the Leafs don't need offense on D; they need D on D. They need guys who can clear the front of the net. Sherratt can do that, but I think Sherratt, and we were talking about it in our group chat, that Sherratt is more likely to go to the Rangers because of the fit, because of him playing with Trouba, because of Gorton being in Montreal. All those, and not to say that there are not other teams in on him, but Jan, I think that trade, in spite of the fact that it took one name off the market, might be good news for the Rangers because the price was not prohibitive.
No, I wrote it in my blog in terms of today, right? I thought it also set the market. Look, with a couple things with Manson. First of all, Rangers might have had interest, but he's a right-handed defenseman and plays the right side, which is really where they don't necessarily need the help per se. Anaheim picking up half the salary also probably increased the price because it helps Colorado stay under the cap. Although with Landeskog going under the knife, you don't know how long he's going to be out, and they can just carry him until the playoffs, put him on LTIR if they have to, and add another piece. Sherratt has been rumored to the Rangers for a while, but there's no way on God's green earth I'm giving up a first rounder for him. I think the other guy they're going to go after maybe is Hampus Lindholm, as you mentioned. But the difference between the two of them is Lindholm is a bit more of an offensive defenseman, doesn't play the penalty kill. Giroux is a guy who can play the penalty kill, which is maybe where they might want to end up using him. I also think, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, Ricard Raquel is another guy they're going to be interested in, because if you've seen what they've been rolling out on their bottom six and on their their second line right wing, they clearly are in desperate need of an upgrade on that third line and guys who can move up to the second line. And with Capo Caco still out with a wrist injury, and none of us know what that injury is, and I wrote as if it's tendon or ligament, there's no guarantee he's coming back right after the trade deadline, depending on the breadth and extent of the injury. So they clearly need upgrades there. And right now, Mr. Drury is sitting on about $32 million worth of prorated cap room. So it's time to get his rear in gear and start making some deals. Now, I know they have cap constraints for the future, and they may only want to get rentals. But I think a lot of it's going to depend. I'm sure Ek is going to talk about what happens with Thomas Hertel. Does he sign a long-term deal? I'm sure that's one of those guys that's monitoring. Claude Giroux is another one. If they overpay Philly to get him, if Giroux doesn't go to Colorado, that's been rumored, another guy. So there are plenty of available guys. Turi Lehkonen, who's been held out with an injury. So all these injuries now, as I wrote also, teams trying to extract more of a value. You also have that downside risk of the bird in hand, because if a guy gets injured, as with Jacob Chychrun, now it takes the guy potentially off the market or reduces that price tag to get him in the trade market. So
here's the one thing I'll say. I agree with most everything you said, Jan, but don't get locked into the right side, left side thing. Like if the Rangers get Justin Braun, he could play both sides. I would prefer Braun over Sherratt because of the cost.
Yes.
You guys have to hear. I don't know if you guys.
I would have preferred Manson, honestly, and if you could have played the other side, I would have been fine with getting Manson, given the type of defenseman he is also.
Right, but the Rangers have been scouting Philly heavy, and if they're not going to get Giroux, I think Braun is their guy. Now, as far as the other upgrade, I think it's important to get it at center. I think Kako will be back. I just have a gut feeling. I don't know. But I think they need that center. So Raquel would be like second or third. You still would want Hertel. And if Kopp gets healthy, maybe Kopp is a cheap option too. So you look at that.
I would love Kopp, but the problem is, as we said, he's hurt now also, right? So look at all these guys. And look, you're going to want to see them play before the deadline if you're going to make a deal for him, because the last thing you want to do is get a guy who's going to be all right. Kopp being out now, Raquel being out now doesn't help matters, right? Hertel, I think, is going to come right down to the wire. That could be a Monday, 2:57 normally, 4 o'clock Lou Lamoriello clock, in order to make a trade. But I think it's going to one of those that go down. Look, I would love Hertel. That, if you ask me, he's the guy I've wanted all year.
Yes.
He's the guy I'd love to get. They have the chips they can afford to move him. They have another first-round pick. They have a couple of seconds they can move. I mean, if he's not going to go back to San Jose, there's a guy you add, because it also gives you your hedge if Ryan Strome ends up being too pricey to bring back next year.
Go ahead, Ike.
All good. So great stuff, Jan. Honestly, really, you got to read Jan's article today too. Good, it's really solid. All right, so
you got to read mine, but I haven't written it yet.
Yeah.
We're prospecting for the future to read Mike's article, though.
Okay, so a lot there to unpack. But Sherratt, first of all, definitely demanding a first-round draft pick. Talked to somebody today about that.
And if that's the case, then Montreal, I think the Montreal is going to have to be prepared to wait. Now they're holding him out tonight.
Holding him out, yeah.
But which might mean that a trade is imminent. But honestly,
it doesn't really mean that.
But again, I thought. I mean, Friedman mentioned, right, that the NHL kind of sours on holding guys out long term while you wait for deals, right? So there's a limited time frame in which you can hold a guy out for maintenance reasons of waiting for a trade, unless you know something is relatively imminent. You can't. I mean, holding a guy out 6 days might not be more risky for the NHL.
You can, though, because you could scrap them.
You can. I agree with you. I'm just saying the optics of it and the way
the optics are bad, but people have done it. The NHL has yet to really. The NHL is one of those things they definitely frown on. There's no question about it. But you have to follow through with any kind of punishment.
Vinny Lecavalier was in a suit with the Flyers for like at least a week, maybe longer, until he got traded. Remember?
I mean,
will
the NHL give Winnipeg or Arizona compensatory draft picks for playing Chychrun and Kopp and they get hurt? I mean, that's what I mean. It's like it's up to the individual team. If you're going to trade a guy, you're determining you're going to trade the guy, and you're worried about him getting hurt, then it's your right, if you're paying the guy, to sit his ass out. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think the NHL, if they ever find,
it's not ridiculous if you're a person who paid a lot of money to go to the game.
We're not talking about we're sending out LeBron James, Zach. We're talking about
we're talking about one of the best Montreal Canadiens, though. I mean, you're talking about
I wouldn't go that far.
They're in 30.
If you're going to see Montreal, there's a certain Mr. Caulfield you're coming to see.
Caulfield,
it's not Ben Sherratt you're coming to see.
No. Oh, I want my money back because Ben Sherratt's not playing against the friggin' Arizona.
And Montreal is a little bit of a hard example to use in this case because they're going to draw anyway. But in Arizona, if they stop playing Chychrun, that's a bigger deal.
Oh, right.
So it's like
they'll get 1,000 instead of 1,500.
All right. Well, here. Well, stop. Let me go. I've been patient. All right. So Sherratt is like the first rounder, and now I was told that was the issue today, and why I think he's being held as today is I believe I'm not going to say panic on Montreal's side, but they're not thrilled about the fact that Manson got a second.
Right.
They're really starting to realize that that
undercut their leverage.
Yeah, this is a good draft coming up. People don't want to give up those first round picks. Some of the teams that are involved with it don't have a first round pick this year. There are teams definitely talking about their first round pick in 2023 already. I know that's coming into play.
You better be sure you're not in the lottery in 2023. Then if you can give up a draft pick,
if
you are.
And the second round pick in the Manson deal was a 23 second, not a 22 second.
Yep.
Right. So that's a big difference too, because it's another year away you are from that player having an impact on your team, and you're already talking about many years away if you're.
But that's just like I said, it was a bonus, even though it was a 23 because you got a player that's going to get to the NHL quicker than you normally would get in a prospect in the trade. So that's the trade-off.
Right.
And presuming you're going to sign player who they got, right? If they sign him, then that's the immediate benefit. And you've also got a second round pick in what may be perceived as a deeper draft,
right? Which
then bolsters the reason. But I said part of that is also them picking up part of the salary. Clearly must have had an impact in terms of
they picked up 50%. So
the other thing was we were mentioning that Hudobin got hurt and he's out for a while. That is pretty big because he was definitely going to get moved. I was told.
Well, I mean, this is a double whammy. He may have been moved if there are teams out there looking for a veteran goaltender, although he's played badly this year and maybe the hip was a problem. But this eliminates, like Thomas in the chat, this eliminates the possibility of Holtby being traded because they need a backup for Ottinger and they're in the playoff race. So they need
Right now, they're probably in the playoffs. They're not.
I don't think they're going to drop out. I mean, they're in a fortuitous position. They have 4 games in hand on your playoff favorite Vegas, 2 games in hand on Edmonton. So they're in a position where they can really help themselves if they get hot at the right time.
Yeah.
And they're not going to drop out of it in the next 6 days. So they're not going to move. They're not going to move Klingberg. They're not going to move Holtby. They might even add. It's a possibility.
Well, considering the fact they just re-signed Pavelski also, who was the guy who there was questionable whether or not they would move. I pretty much think that as opposed to, as Mike said, being sellers, they're a decent possibility to be buyers. And they could afford to move certain guys or certain picks to be able to do it. If you think that Ottinger is the guy who's going to carry you forward, the one thing they are going to need now with Heiskanen out is probably another blue liner. So you got to probably add them to the mix in terms of guys who are looking to acquire guys on defense, as opposed to sellers, where as of about 3 weeks ago, we probably all would have said that Klingberg was going to be heading out of town.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's a rumor out there that Monahan is on the market. That's just not true. I checked into it already. And
why would Calgary do that?
Yeah, and the warning, here's like, a little bit of like, I wish I had if someone out there is a graphic designer and can make a X warning signs about weird trade rumors graphic, that'd be awesome. Because I want to have our own little song. Okay, so
here's my graphic design about the New York Islanders.
We'll get to that. All right, so
they've won 3 in a row.
We'll get to that. Yeah. All right. So the reality is that some writers out there who used to work for major things are now working on their own, and because they're working on their own, there's a pressure to, when you work on your own, to create more traffic. And I know about this pressure a little bit. All right, and some writers have made friends with some agents who help those writers talk about who was going to get drafted by Seattle last year, and some agents are looking to make things happen because their players aren't happy or some situations happening. So be very wary of false prophets at this time of year, like I've always said. And I'm not sitting there and I'm saying, that this particular writer or a writer that might match that description I'm saying is always wrong, because that's definitely not the case. No writer's always wrong, but do be careful about certain things and try to trace why something, because like I've always said I've always tried to say is a rumor doesn't, people don't just come to me and say, hey, here's a rumor. No one gives you a rumor for just the hell of it unless they have something that they want to get from that, either from putting that rumor out there or trading it with me for like information on something else that I have, or there's always a reason. Okay. And I've learned about this over the years, and I've been doing this long enough independently that I know the agents that trick me and the agents that might represent people that end up being drafted by Seattle or so. So anyway, there's a lot more to the story. Just be careful. It's always fun. I'm not one to sit there. I hate to be like, I sound horrible, but busting on someone about putting rumors out there, but do try to follow a little bit of the behind the scenes things. Anyway, all right. So Monahan's not on the market, and it's not to say that Monahan couldn't be involved in a trade. It's possible, but they're not shopping him or anything like that. That's like you said, Russ. Why would they do that?
That's a summer move. I mean, they're not going to mess up that team's chemistry right now. No. Everything is going right. In fact, they might be able to add something before the deadline, another piece, but they're going too well right now. They will not do that.
Yeah.
But if they lose in the second round, and then it's time to, and then they have to make a decision about re-signing Giroux and re-signing Tkachuk, and it comes at the cost of trading Sean Monahan, then they'll probably do it.
And that could happen. But that's not a move to make right now.
Right.
Monahan might not be having a great year, but he's still a big part of that core. He's still a part of that team. And you don't want to screw with that team right now. You don't want to screw with that core. They're playing so well. All right. So here's the other thing. Sherratt, it's brought out there that he's not playing tonight, like we talked about, and does that mean a trade is imminent? Okay. That's what people are sitting there saying. And it doesn't. It really doesn't. It means if a trade was imminent and a guy's scratched, it means it happens in the next hour. Like that's where, if you get to that point. But if they're talking to somebody and trying to get, so say I'm Montreal and I'm talking to Florida, for example, and I want to get a first round pick out of Florida, but they're not willing to do that. Not only they don't have a first round pick this year, but they're not willing to give me their first round pick next year. So then I talk to Boston. Boston's not willing to give me their first either. I go through that, and now I suddenly put Sherratt up on. I scratch him, and that makes Boston and Florida worried because they're like, oh man, do they have another deal? Do they have another trade in place?
That's fair.
And that it could be, not only do you not want to get him hurt, but it also is a way of making each team say, well, hey, maybe we have to buck up. Maybe something is imminent, but doesn't mean it's imminent. And it's not something that you can go to all the time. And it's not really like Scott Gordon's way to do things normally. So I really don't think it's imminent.
Gordon.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, but the thing is, I just looked at Montreal's schedule. They have 4 home games before the deadline. Actually, 3 home games before the deadline, and then Boston on deadline day. So, if they're holding him out, you could assume that means that he would be traded before Thursday, which is their next game. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense unless you're planning on holding him out that game. So, but I think like I said before, I think that the Manson deal undercuts the market for Sherratt simply because I think Manson's a better defenseman than Sherratt. Now Sherratt can play
at least they're in the same world. Like at least they're in the same.
Yeah, they're in the same world.
They're in the same realm. But I think
honestly, when you match up the two, Sherratt, because he has a little bit of offense, he just does have a decent shot. He can give you a little bit more of that than Manson.
And he also has some more experience in the playoffs. So
well, okay, and he can play both sides. He can play. He's a lefty, but he can play the left and right. And
that's what I wanted to talk about too, Mike. Yeah. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see it yesterday, but I was on Tom Laidlaw's podcast in the morning before everything went crazy with my day, and I was on with Kevin and Tom about when we talked about the Rangers situation.
Right. And
I brought up to Tom, I'm like, this lefty righty thing. Tom was a defenseman in the league. I'm like, is right-handed, left-handed. I'm like, what? And Tom, of course, is like, it's so ridiculous, And this is what he said, and I thought it was really interesting. He said that a lot of lefties, because of a shortage of right-handed players in general, a lot of lefties grow up playing both. That they have to grow up playing right D and left D, so they're okay. They're fine at playing right D because they've always played both. Where a lot of right-handed players never play the left side because you need the right-handed player. You would rather have the right-handed on the right D. Now He said that actually, changed. Like there was a time back when he was playing for a little bit where you wanted to have the opposite, a left-handed player on the right D, a right-handed player on the left D, because you have more, you enables you to see the ice better. You have more of the ice on your stick when you're at the point. You have a bigger angle. So Tom hates this whole concept, and I said, it makes me insane too. That especially when we're talking, it's one thing.
Well, that's why I brought it up too. Tom and I agree on this.
I did talk to a team about this, and I talked to interestingly enough, I talked to a team about Justin Braun, and they said, well, actually, no, we were looking for left D. Okay, we're looking for, and I got the opposite. We're Justin Braun is right-handed, and right D. So that's a situation where that is a little bit harder for right D to come over to the left side because they maybe haven't played that much. Mm-hmm. But every left D, he said, that's half decent has played plenty of right D in their life.
Well, I would bet you Braun has done it. I would almost.
He's done it too.
But this is the thing. I mean, I agree that's the viewpoint that, and what may have been the case back when Tom played, but clearly a lot of the coaches now, they have a sort of left-right mentality where they want on the right side a right-hand shooter because it's easier in terms of passing. Now, like in Toronto, their top pairing until Muzzin's injury was Riley and Brody is a left shot who's played the right side for most of his career, and it's been a remarkable success. But since Muzzin got hurt, they've had to move Brody to the second pairing to the left side, and every player that they played with Riley has not been a fit to the point that they're starting Ilya Lyubushkin on the top pairing tonight with Morgan Riley. And right. I mean, Russ is right here. Ilya Lyubushkin is a good third pairing defenseman, but because Liljegren is not ready to play it and Sandin is playing the offside, they have no other option right now until they go out and get a defenseman. And
just because you bring up Babushka to play for you, it doesn't mean that you're going to. Sorry.
No, but even the thought for one game, it's like it just shows
your
everybody
defense
wants to use tire fire. The Leafs are a grease fire. It's worse.
You need to be able. You need to have NHL players who can go to the off wing. It's absurd. It's like, and they need to be able to play with.
Can't act.
If you don't, I don't know that.
Okay, right now at 21 years old, Timothy Liljegren is an NHL player. Is he a 20 to 22 minute top pairing guy? No, and he gets exposed playing that. Rasmus Sandin is an excellent.
Mike, but how much? And this is what I asked Tom too, and he agreed with me. How much of this, like, okay, no one can play with Morgan Riley, fine. How much of that has to do with whether they're right-handed or not? Like it also is a matter of like being able to read a player's game. Like if you're a defenseman, it's being able to pick him up when he takes a rush, or what he likes to do with the puck behind the net, where he likes to put the pass, where he likes to move the puck out.
Obviously, it has some to do. You can say, well, Brody's a lefty and he's playing on the right side with Riley, but Brody is 31 years old and has 10, 11 years of NHL experience. Liljegren has less than a season of NHL experience. He's a righty and he's not a fit. And Sandin, who is an excellent prospect, is playing his offside. Yeah. He's not right. So.
No, I get it. I
get that part, but I always default back to, and I hate to use him as the example, but like in Detroit, like Babcock had an all lefty power play.
Yeah.
And he did it the whole season.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure there are people out there who would be like, you can't do that.
And Russ, he had an entire
in New York all the time because they had so many righties that didn't.
He had an entire defensive core that was left-handed.
But remember, if you're not used to switching, right, it's also muscle memory. If you're used to playing the outside to your left side and now you're on the right side,
that's why
there's a different kind of mentality, and you can't be crossed up thinking before you do something. It needs to be read and react. And if you're not trained that way, that's where the difficulty.
No, that's why I think it has to be a veteran
on one side.
That.
To switch sides is very difficult, especially from left wing to right wing and vice versa. It's a different mentality, especially on breakouts and defensive and zone assignments and everything else.
But even veterans who aren't used to doing that, Russ, have a difficult time. If you remember when the Leafs acquired Jake Muzzin, everybody assumed Muzzin was going to play the right side. And then after a game of playing the right side and he got exposed, they moved him back to the left, and he's been fine ever since.
It doesn't mean he couldn't have figured it out.
I'm going to blame youth hockey coaches in a second here, and I don't want to do that. I just think that this is
I will tell you
the reality is when these guys play so much hockey, they should be able to figure. They should be, by the time they get the NHL level, they should know.
But I'll tell you the other part. The other part, like what Jan was talking about on playing the wing, that's why it's good to have too many centers, because it's so easy for a center to play the wing. Because they're already playing the hardest position. They can play either side after that. And everybody's told me that in the last 10 years going into the draft. Young guys tell me that. So That's why if you're a team, you always overdraft at center.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. Now, okay, I want to get past this part, and I want to get on to
rumors.
The rumor that I posted yesterday, and I need to talk about. I really wanted to talk about it because it was sucks. I couldn't talk about it on Tom's show because it happened. I got it right after I left that show. But the reality here is the Vegas Golden Knights and what they're doing right now. Obviously, they're losing games, but what they're going to do to try to be cap compliant should Stone be able to come back, before the end of the season. And how they're going to do that. And they have to make this decision in the next week because if they don't, they can't bring Stone back, or I don't know what happens. I mean, I don't even know.
They have to keep him out till the end of the year.
But if he's healthy, can you do that legally? I don't even know.
Yes. There's nothing illegal about it.
No, I mean, honestly, listen, okay, fine. I know you can do it.
If he is healthy, the likelihood of comments being made by him or especially his agent is the issue that you have here,
right?
Because then you get into whether or not you're implicitly violating league rules.
It's not like they invented his back problems. His back problems exist.
Yeah, but you find me an NHL player who doesn't have back problems, and I'll tell you who. I mean, it's like, honestly, the reality is like everybody in the NHL has concussion history.
Oh, I mean, there's a difference.
No, but listen, I don't even want to get into this again because I've beaten this dead horse. But the reality is this: if he is for some reason healthy, and able to play, and like Jan's saying, like wanting to play because his team's not going to make the playoffs if he doesn't play. If he wants to come back, then and they don't do anything by the trade deadline, what can they do? Like if you literally have guys on LTIR, what is the rule on this? Like I was wondering about this the other day. Like if you literally have guys on LTIR,
well, there's a cap on how much you can have in LTIR.
Yeah, but if they're healthy again, Mike, right. If they get healthy and you haven't made a move by the deadline to clear cap space, what happens? Like
I'll tell you what they can do. They could go and get one of those contracts out there from a player who's not playing. Get that contract, use that cap space, activate Stone. That's what they could do.
What do you mean a player who's not playing?
No, they can't.
They can't after the trade deadline.
No,
after the trade deadline, Russ.
They can't.
They can't do that.
You're saying after the trade deadline.
Yeah, so after the trade deadline, what is the law here? Like we have a long time between the trade deadline.
They can't even do it before the trade deadline.
Why can't you do it?
Because to activate the player, like say they trade for Shea Weber. Okay. And Shea Weber's $7.8 million. To be able to activate him and then put him on LTIR, you have
cap room.
You have to be a $7.8 million under the cap, which they're not. So
the only possibility is Riley Smith just landed on IR with a knee injury.
Well, there you go.
Nobody knows how significant that knee injury. If for some reason that knee injury is going to require surgery and put him out, you can swap the two and you have enough cap room to fit Stone in to replace Smith.
Bingo. Right. Exactly. Right. And I know that this guy.
It's a miracle.
I know, right. I know that this guy does not have the interest around the league that Riley Smith would as a rental.
Well, wait a second. Can I talk about this Riley Smith rumor before we go past this?
Well, I was just going to say, Dadonov. I'd be trying to trade Dadonov long time before I'm trading Riley Smith. Riley Smith is important to that team.
You can move Dadonov, but you have to put it you have to go like a first or second. It's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
And you can do that now, and that's fine. But there is definite interest in with the Rangers and Riley Smith. And I was told this. It's
been rumored for a while.
It's been rumored for a while. It sort of went away when Stone was hurt. It didn't look like they had to do anything right. They didn't have to make any moves because if they have to move, but if they're going to move him somewhere, and if they are nervous about Stone possibly coming back, or if they are nervous about missing the playoffs because they can't let Stone come back, or whatever it is, I seriously put it like a 50% chance now that Riley Smith's a Ranger a week from now. And
this is Vegas's low point right now. Leonard's been out. Stone is out. Alec Martinez is out. Pacioretty's in and out of the lineup.
Yes, I know it's their low point.
And they're still in the playoffs is my point.
Well, they're in the playoffs only because of games played at this point. But, yeah, I mean, to get to a low point, you have to start trending downward. And when I was talking about them not making the playoffs, it's because they were starting to trend downward. This is not their low point yet because they are still in a playoff spot, Mike. And if they go lower than this, they could.
Well, I'm saying I think this is how low can you go? This is probably the lowest that they're going to go.
I don't know. I mean, they've lost Riley Smith now too, and they've lost. It's like injuries are a huge factor for this team. They have lost a ton of their mojo. And
they're still in the playoff spot. That's all I know.
with 4 games ahead of Dallas. Who's
4 games in hand on Dallas. The Dallas with 4 games in hand.
Dallas is not a juggernaut.
Right.
Right. If they're all healthy, the problem is also you have now basically ripped apart your prospect system to get a lot of these guys. So you don't have viable replacements to put in place when you have all these injuries. Like they imported
on the show more often.
They imported Pacioretty. Look at who they gave up to get them, and sooner or later, that's gonna come back to bite you. And you Lauren Brissant and Logan Thompson, may not be the answer between
but Dallas has games in hand on both Edmonton and Vegas, and until Edmonton addresses their pathetic goaltending situation, I don't care what the frig they do. They're not making the playoffs if they don't change.
Koskinen is 5-2-1 his last 8.
Oh, sippity dude!
The only thing I want to say,
I would be careful. I would be careful about goaltending, given who you have right now between the pipes for your team.
One at a
time. I would not basically go off on anything.
No. Pause. I'm going to mute all of you.
I do need to retort one thing. It's just a quick thing. Basically, what Jan's saying is right. There will be a price for Vegas to pay. Doesn't mean it's going to be this year.
No, I agree. I'm just saying they are in a low point. The problem is right now they're being hit hard by injuries, and because they've made the moves they made, which. Look, you can say whether you agree or don't agree. I still don't love the Pacioretty deal. We discussed this a while ago. This is where it's coming home to roost because you don't have you don't have enough in your system to replace guys because of who you've had to move to uplift the talent base, which they've no question done. That's my point.
Yep. Yeah, those are good points. Okay, so here's the thing. I mean,
and Mike?
Go ahead.
My shoulder hurts. Oh,
you're getting trash talked by Karen in the chat room, Mike. I mean, that's like that's an all-time. Talk about Vegas all-time lows. This is an all-time low from Mike. Okay, she's the nicest person in the friggin' world. And
I'm not talking trash to Corinne.
No, she's trash. She's
trash talking you.
Oh, but gee,
she's talking about. She said pathetic goalie situation. Pot kettle, Mike.
All right, but we're not gonna. Okay, Mike will be the first to admit that Toronto's in trouble. So anyway, all right.
Hey, how long have I been saying this crap?
Hey, I got Campbell in 2 weeks.
Mike, talk about what's going to be on your gravestone. You said the other day your gravestone will be something else. I think the gravestone should be Mike will be the first to admit that Toronto's in trouble.
Jesus.
All right. So here we go. Let's reel this back in a little bit. Let's get back on the rails for a second. Okay, so all right. Where was I? All right. So okay. So Riley Smith. Okay. As a Ranger, could very much happen. And I talked to 2 people yesterday who think it is going to happen. And these are 2 other teams who would like to get Riley Smith as well. One being in Boston, who thinks that he's going to the Rangers. And now the injury is, of course, we don't know what's going on with that, right? So that.
No, but the one thing that makes me shy away from this is the fact that Riley Smith's not a center. And the Rangers are clearly, we've talked about Hurdle, we've talked about Andrew Kopp, we've talked about, Chris Tierney, Russ was mentioning. Yes. They're all centers. And
I know, but I'm not.
Getting one, Mike, doesn't preclude getting another, right? They have the cap room, they have the capacity. Now, Smith is a UFA at the end of the year.
But
matters. Right. But Jim, if you want to tune in next Monday to see me not be able to finish the sentence.
No. Let's finish this, and then you. But I'm assuming the Rangers are making 2 moves. One is the defenseman, which we've talked about, which Sherratt or whatever, and the other is the center. And if they, I don't think they're making 2 moves at forward. I think they're making 1 move. And if they're making 1 move, Riley Smith doesn't fit what I think that Chris Giroux is going for.
No, but Jan is right. They could make 3, and I don't think this will happen. But it's not like they can't use Riley Smith. That's silly.
No, I didn't say that. I think he's a good.
I know.
And we know Gallant likes him from his days in Vegas, and I really admit that. But what I'm saying is, I think their priority is to stay flexible. If Hurdle comes available before 3 p.m. on Monday, they need the cap space to be able to make that move.
Cap space isn't a concern right now, Mike. They have so much available cap space.
If they add $5 million,
yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
They got a ton of cap room.
There's no issue
right now available.
Okay.
They could definitely add three players of that category. Not like
Relax, Mr. Cap Central. Relax.
All right. Claude Giroux. For a second. Okay, let's talk about Claude Giroux. And I think there is something. People are still afraid of Claude Giroux out there. And they're afraid of him because of they don't know, and they just don't know if he wants to leave Philly, and that it keeps coming up. And so what's happening now, I am hearing, is teams are asking to talk to Claude Giroux. Like they're asking for permission to talk to him before this happens. Like to say, because some of them like Claude Giroux, but nope, we're in a very interesting era right now where even though these guys are rentals, this is an era where people don't want to trade for Reynolds. People want to trade for Giroux and keep him for a bit. That's actually what's going on too. So, so if they're going to keep Giroux for a bit, that's requiring Giroux to leave the area, which is not something he really wants to do. So,
can I ask a basic question to you, Eric?
Yeah.
So the basic question is, since Chuck Fletcher went on national TV and said he and Claude haven't spoken, how could a team speak to Claude if the GM hasn't spoken to him?
You're exactly right.
No, I'm not exactly right, because we know.
No, but well, first of all, they're not being allowed to talk to Claude Giroux.
But what we know is that Chuck Fletcher, that statement on Saturday was complete horse bunk, because there's no. It's either one of two things. It's either
he's not the only person on that team that can talk to Claude Giroux.
It's either what I'm saying is it's either opposing general managers or Chuck talking to Pat Brisson, his agent, or Chuck actually talking to Giroux and then misrepresenting that he's not talked to him. It's one or the other. There's no way in God's green earth that they haven't talked to him already.
I don't think Fletcher would lie about that. And here's the weird thing about that. No, listen to me for a second. No, but when I say that, Russ, I'm like talking about like that. I don't think some people lie about certain things, but he's got an assistant GM who used to house Claude Giroux. Like, I mean, he doesn't need to be talking to Claude Giroux. And the reality is, if he wants,
actually, he does. There is a point he has to.
There's somebody who's on.
Well, there's a point he has to, Russ. But this is the point. If you're him, you want to and you're negotiating, right? You want to hold that you actually talking to the person to the last second. Like you're the one you bring in at the end to close the deal. But in the meantime, don't go back and forth and get like an emotional war going.
There was somebody on this panel that once told me, and I'll joke about this. How do you know a GM is lying to you? His lips are moving, or how you have to parse everything that they say. Like Chuck Fletcher can say, well, I haven't talked to Claude Giroux. Well, that doesn't mean that Danny Briere hasn't talked to Claude Giroux. Somebody has talked to Claude Giroux. There's no way.
But I think Fletcher wants to be able to say that to teams, because if he hasn't talked to him, he can't sit there and say Claude doesn't want to come to your team. All right.
I'm going to tell you a mistake that Fletcher is making.
There's plenty of mistakes.
This is a mistake simply because this isn't the type of free agent market that I think helps you if you wait till the last second. I think if you wait till the last second,
right,
you are going to get hurt, and you're going to get less value than you expect, because I think the teams that strike first, we saw yesterday, got great value, and I think it's going to continue that way because, again, how long is a team going to sit and be strung along by the Flyers with Giroux when they can go after 2 or 3 other guys? And that's what's going to happen.
Right. But I think that Pavelski going out of this thing gave the Flyers the feeling that they had more time. All right. That Pavelski and Giroux were sort of being paired as like the similar type players, right? They're experienced guys, come in, they can do a lot of things. And they were worried about Pavelski versus Giroux. Like, as far as, would Pavelski get the first round pick and not Giroux? That kind of thing. But I want guys in the chat room to understand what I'm saying here very clearly. Like, I'm not an idiot for saying that Fletcher hasn't talked to Giroux, that Fletcher saying he hasn't talked to Giroux is true. And the reason because, like I said,
you're saying he's just saying that to the other GMs because of the way he wants to frame it.
No, I also think that he is legitimately not talking to Claude Giroux, and for actual reasons. Like, I think that because if the second he talks to Claude Giroux, okay, that's the moment at which Giroux has to make a decision, right? And as this has gone along,
he'll make a decision after Thursday night. Like Thursday night at 11 o'clock, he will make a decision. And if I were the GM, I would trade him that night because that's when his value will be best.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that he, again, like I said, it doesn't mean that other people aren't talking to Giroux for him, and Fletcher isn't talking to those people about where his head's at and stuff like that. It just means that Fletcher likes to play this thing a certain way that enables him to hold the most power he can hold, and that means he comes in at the very end. and let the other guys work on the emotional stuff prior, because perhaps the feeling is that Briere is better at handling Giroux because he knows Giroux better, and Giroux has more respect for Briere. Briere might not, Giroux might not respect Fletcher as much as he respects Briere. Things like that. You've got to remember that there's people and personalities involved in this, so this is the way it goes. Now, I do think that there is a growing feeling that the Rangers are going to be the place he wants to go. And that is largely because please. It's largely because of proximity. I mean, it's like
I've been saying forever, just move him up I-95.
Right.
But
that
again,
is, if you do that,
they'll have to my view is they're going to have to overpay to get him. Philly to move him in the division, and especially the Rangers. The Rangers are going to have to pay like 1.5 to 1 3/4 at least what somebody else might have to pay.
Yeah. Yes. But that is unless like if you're Giroux, you have a no movement clause. You can say where you want to go.
Right. So, there's probably only like 3 or 4 teams. That's it.
There might be less than that, and
I would say Colorado is one. I would say Florida would be a dark horse given where they are. Right. I would say the Rangers, and I might even dare say the Bruins might be a team he might have interest in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rangers are by far make the most sense to him from personal perspective by far, because it is only 90 miles away, and 90 minutes away. And he's got young kids and all that stuff. He wants to be around. And that's, if you go to New York, it's like, hey, you move everybody to a hotel in New York for a couple months. That's fun. That's all good. You can do that. But I think the Western Conference is a long shot with him. And I think that we saw that yesterday with Manson getting traded to Colorado. I think
I don't think the Manson deal precludes Colorado.
It doesn't preclude it, but it is another.
I can't say it's a long shot when they have a chance to win a cup. I still think Giroux wants to win a cup.
Remember, he does want to win a cup. A, they can eat salary if they need to, Philly. But B, remember, Landeskog could end up sitting out the last 20 games of the year and come back for the playoffs, and they can be cap compliant by then.
And the other team that I know St. Louis has been mentioned as a long shot, but the other team that's been mentioned specifically by Elliot Friedman has been Florida. And
I know Florida's interested in him. I know they have interest in him. I know this for a fact, and I know that But then again, they need to be convinced that he's willing, that he wants to go there. Could
a long shot be Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but Carolina would have to pay. Carolina. I don't know if they have the right matches for Carolina. I don't know if the right player matches there for Carolina. I mean, and whether or not Carolina would have to pay him, and whether or not they're willing to do that. Carolina is a tricky one because their ownership is so bizarre. It's hard to predict where they'll go. But I think that's a possibility. I do think that I do think the Rangers, even though I haven't put them up on the rumor chart that high yet, I think they're going to be heading up later this afternoon, because just from what I'm hearing, that there's just definite. Now, Drew the Caps is another. That's not too far away either, but I haven't heard that at all. So.
No, I mean the Caps really don't have the room as well.
Yeah.
So, just to satisfy the Leaf appetite out there, Friedman had a couple interesting things about the Leafs. One, obviously with them starting Eric Källgren tonight, and he played a good period and a half a couple games ago on a Saturday night when. Mrazek really didn't play well. But this is not a situation where they think Eric Källgren can step in and give them quality games. I mean, anything is possible, but that's not the thing here. And Campbell's going to be out for at least a couple weeks, and Mrazek is not instilling any confidence in the Leafs organization with his play of late, although they're talking a good game. Well, he didn't cost us the game. No, he just let in the winning goal on a short side a shot that he should have had. But that they're looking for goalies. But I think personally, the Marc-Andre Fleury talk is fantasy. I would be shocked if he goes to Toronto, because I just don't think that's I think they could afford like an Anton Forsberg, that wouldn't make me excited, or a Craig Anderson or somebody like that as a third goalie to bring in that gives you some options. But in terms of, Marc-Andre Fleury, unless Chicago is taking Mrazek back, it makes no sense. Defense is.
I have heard someone in the chat room brought up Jake Allen, and I have heard that name a little bit in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think, Mike, you're underselling forwards because I think he played really well for Ottawa this year, and actually would probably be your starting goalie right now over Mrazek at this point.
He has played well for Ottawa, Jan, and maybe I shouldn't be prejudiced by the way he played a few years ago. But a few years ago, teams played him if they were wanting to tank.
That was a few years ago, not this year.
Yeah, he's got talent though. He's not.
Right. He had a bad game his last game again. They lost 6-3 to Chicago, but beyond that, he's actually been very, very good this year.
I would rather have Craig Anderson, because you're not asking this guy to come in and be your starter for the rest of the year in the playoffs. You're just asking this guy to keep the water from rising over your nose.
But again, you're presuming Campbell's back in 2 weeks from a rib injury. That may be an unrealistic presumption.
Right.
And maybe it's possible. But remember, if it's a rib or oblique, you need to be careful in terms of what the injury actually is.
I also think that Toronto has no real strong super desire to play Tampa in the first round. And I think that, so the reality is, they can fall into the wild card very easily.
Right, and then they play the winner, either Carolina or Florida.
Right, which I think actually matches up better than Tampa does. Because the reason I say that is that Tampa is another running gun team but they can play defense better than Toronto. So where, if against Florida or Carolina, I think you have a better shot. They're more balanced teams. They're a better shot of overwhelming them offensively, which is what Toronto has to do to win a series. So I think that's, and both of those have goalie situations that, Bobrovsky and Anderson. I mean, obviously we'd love to see the Anderson Toronto series, would be really fun. But
the other thing was, obviously they're still in the market for defensemen, but Ristolainen falling off the market, Klingberg off the market, now Manson off the market. I don't know where they go other than Sherratt, but I don't think they're willing to pay the price that Montreal wants for Sherratt. So they might be looking at secondary options or guys. If they're going to trade a first round pick, it might be for a defenseman.
Calvin DeHaan, Michael.
That's a good call.
Yeah, but he's a lefty. He's a left shot.
We just went through the whole lefty righty.
I know it means something to them.
It means something to them. Obviously,
does it mean something to them on the right side?
So who else is out there then?
On the second and third pairing, does it mean that much?
Mike, who else is out there though? You got Sherratt, you got Lindholm, you got DeHaan.
Lindholm's a lefty too.
Who else?
Justin Braun, Luke
Braun,
Shannon, okay. Damon Severson. I mean,
I don't know if New Jersey's moving Severson, and given the year Severson has had, I think his price tag is going to be higher than you think.
Colin Miller.
Miller's probably the one I think that gets moved because he makes a lot of
money. Yep, he's expensive and he's got your term.
Right, but Buffalo. I think Buffalo would be thankful to get anything for him for right now because he's been on the.
Well, Buffalo would move him. There's no question about it. But he's expensive and has term.
And I've said Colin Miller off and on the last couple of months because he played for Sault Ste. Marie for Kyle Dubas and Sheldon Keefe, so they're there, and he's a right hand shot. Yeah, yes, Johnny, I'm gonna have a stroke.
No. If Mike hasn't had one by now, we're fine.
The last thing, the other thing was Friedman was saying that the Leafs right now are not pleased with the way their fourth line has been going. Spezza's maybe starting to show, although Spezza's still having a good year. Spezza's showing Simmons is not being as physical as they need him to be, hence the concern I had about Sunday about Dylan Cousins taking a run at Matthews and Matthews having to cross-check Rasmus Dahlin in the neck after he gets pushed into the crease. I think Connor McDavid would have gotten a $5,000 fine, but Matthews gets a 2-game suspension. They're talking about Mott from
Tyler Mott,
Canucks, or Tyson Yost from Colorado, or the possibility of a couple of their NCAA prospects, Nick Aberzies or Matthew Nice, signing after the season and being injected into the lineup. So a lot of things. I think the Leafs are going to be busy. And that's a good thing for us because
I think they'll definitely do a couple of little things. I don't know how big it'll get though with them. They really don't have a lot of room to move around. Unless, of course, they can get somebody hurt, somebody else hurt before then. But I don't think that'll happen either. And the fact that I say that no one even cares or bats an eye, it shows how ridiculous the whole thing is. But yeah, I just think that
I heard what you said. I was ignoring it, Eck.
Yeah, this LTIR thing just pisses me off no end. So yeah, I like the idea of Jake Allen in Toronto a lot. I think.
The problem there is salary I think he's at 2.8 million, which I don't know whether. Yeah, I don't know if Montreal. Gordon does not have the history, Jan, of retaining salary. Gordon,
Montreal, they have to. I mean, they just have to.
I mean,
he might have done a couple
has
times
to
with
get
the
better
Rangers when
faster.
they had the letter. I'm trying to remember if he did. I don't think he was precluded from doing it. Given it depends, obviously, it depends on ownership and what ownership is willing to do. Right? It's a different situation there. And Allen doesn't really have a future. And I know he just practiced yesterday, but you'd want to see him in a game to make sure he's healthy because he's been out for so long. Also,
and he's got term. He's got another year at almost $3 million. So if you're trading for Jake Allen, you're basically saying you're not going to re-sign Jack Campbell, or you're going to trade Peter Mrazek, which right now might be, earlier in the season they said that was
you'd be skipping to the loo if they said that right now, Mike.
Well, yeah, but good luck with 2 more years at 3.8 million.
Well, that's the problem when you look. I personally I don't think Campbell is as good as he was early in the year, and I clearly don't think he's as bad as he's been lately. Right now, part of it could have been, for all we know, he might have been nursing an injury. That's a convenient excuse, but he may not have admitted he had an injury. Yeah. And honestly, their defense has been sieve-like in front of him the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the truth. I mean, it's really hard to blame all this on Campbell. All right, that's all the time we have for today. If you want to see more of this, you'll be back again tomorrow.
I'll try to be more excited tomorrow.
We'll be back again tomorrow. It was really great having your perspective, Jan. Thanks so much for joining. We will talk to you then. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the night. Lots of games tonight.